What if you found a message in a bottle, but not from some castaway on an island? What if it was from the last survivor of an entire civilization? Today, we're diving into exactly that, a final testament, sealed away for a future its author would never, ever see. So let's open it up and explore the final words from a lost world. So right off the bat, you get this incredibly powerful, lonely voice, a man named Moroni. And get this, he's not just a historian writing about history, he is the history, the last living piece of it. His people, his family, his whole world, gone. And with these words, he begins his final, solitary job. It's a wild thought, isn't it? I mean, really think about it. If you were the last one, what would you even say? Would you try to explain what happened? Warn whoever comes next? Plead with them? Well, this is the exact spot Moroni found himself in. And what he decided to do is what we're unpacking today. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to look at this through 5 main ideas. First, we'll get into the last survivor's story, who this guy really was. Then, we'll dig into why he created this record for the future. After that, we'll check out his very direct warning, explore his defense of a God of miracles, and then we'll wrap up with his final invitation to anyone who would one day read his words. So let's jump right in. First things first, who exactly is the man writing this message? To really get what he's saying, we have to understand his world, or, what was left of it. So Moroni was the son of a man named Mormon, who was not only a general, but also the main historian for his people, the Nephites. After his father was killed, this huge, heavy burden of finishing and preserving their entire history fell on Moroni's shoulders, and he had to do it all alone. To give you a little context, this is all happening about 400 years after the coming of Jesus Christ, as their history tells it. What was once a golden era had just completely unraveled into centuries of war between two groups, the Nephites and the Lamanites. And it all ended in this massive, catastrophic final battle that basically annihilated Moroni's entire nation. And this is where the story becomes so raw and human. He wasn't just some detached historian writing about a tragedy from long ago. He was living in the middle of it. His father, his family, his friends, everyone was gone. He was basically a fugitive in his own homeland, hiding from enemies with absolutely no one to turn to and nowhere to go. So you have to ask, right? If you're in that state, completely alone, in constant danger, why would you spend your last days engraving a record on metal plates? What could possibly motivate you to take on a project this huge for a world you might not see for centuries? Well, Moroni is crystal clear about the why, and it's pretty fascinating. He says, look, the metal plates themselves, they have no material worth. This isn't some treasure map. His purpose, as he puts it, is not to get gain. The real value, he insists, is spiritual. He says the record itself is of great worth, and he wrote it for the welfare of a future people. He also writes with this incredible humility. He's totally aware that he's not perfect, and he asks the future readers, hey, if you find faults in here, they're human faults. He's basically saying, don't throw the whole message out because the messenger has flaws. Instead, maybe learn from our mistakes so you can be wiser than we were. And this is where the whole record takes a sharp turn. It's not just a history book. It's a warning. Moroni claims that he was shown a vision of the very people who would one day find his words, so he starts speaking directly to them, or from his perspective, directly to us. And his first observation is a bit of a chilling one. He sees a future where religious organizations get polluted, where they're lifted up in the pride of their hearts. It's a pretty profound warning about how any institution, no matter how noble its start, can lose its way and become more about status than about service. He keeps going on this theme, describing a society that's just obsessed with materialism. He saw people who would love money and your substances and your fine apparel more than you love the poor and the needy. It's a critique about getting your priorities mixed up that feels like it could have been written yesterday. And finally, he warns of a time when people would just flat out deny the power of God, a time when people would commonly say that the age of miracles is over, that they've been done away. And this specific point, it becomes the central argument of his entire final message. So in response to this future skepticism that he saw, Moroni lays out this really powerful defense. He doesn't just complain about a loss of faith, he directly takes on the whole idea that miracles could ever stop happening. And this chart here really lays out his logic perfectly. He argues that people who deny miracles have basically invented a different kind of God in their minds, one who changes, or maybe one who loses power over time. But Moroni says, no, the true God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's the one who created everything. So his point is this: if God is unchangeable and all-powerful, how could he possibly stop being a God of miracles? It just wouldn't make sense.
So if miracles seem to have stopped, what's the deal? Well, according to Moroni, the problem isn't with God. God hasn't changed. He says the reason miracles cease is because people dwindle in unbelief. In his view, the variable isn't God, it's humanity's faith.
And that brings us to the very end. After telling his story, stating his purpose, and delivering his big warning, Moroni makes one final, heartfelt plea. It's a direct call to action for anyone, anywhere, who might one day read what he wrote. He lays out this really clear path, almost like a step-by-step guide. It starts with a simple but huge choice. Doubt not, but be believing. From there, he says you have to actively come unto the Lord. Then, you need to ask for answers with firmness. Commit to serving the true and living God. And finally, you have to endure to the end. And this right here is the absolute conviction that must have fueled him through all those lonely years. Despite being completely alone, hunted, with no guarantee that anyone would ever find his record, he was absolutely certain that his voice would echo from the dust. He just knew that one day his words would be heard. So to wrap it all up, what Moroni left behind is just so many things at once. It's the tragic story of a lone survivor. It's a pointed warning to a future he saw in a vision. It's a powerful defense of a God of miracles. And it's a timeless invitation for anyone to find faith and act on it. A record he called of great worth, saved through centuries. And that brings us right back to where we started. Moroni answered that question by preserving a message of warning, of theology, and of hope. It leaves all of us to wonder, if you were in his shoes, facing the end of your world, what would you decide is important enough to save for the next one?